Hello, everyone. Welcome to Go Global World again. And at our global community, we speak with entrepreneurs from around the world on challenging topics, helping them solve specific problems and allow their business to move to the next step. Today, we are going to discuss another country and opportunities to get in there, and we will be speaking about Canada. Um, Specifically about Canada for entrepreneurs is a Canadian visa. And today I have a special guest that is joining us as Shawn Olson, who is representing the company startups. He's a VP of Business Development at Innovative Incubator Empowered Startups from British Columbia. Shawn is a graduate from University of British Columbia. He is actually living in um, Vancouver. He is a dynamic leader and lifelong coach who believes in inspirational power of human spirits. And he has 6 years living and working in Central Europe. Has provided it has provided Shawn a global perspective of life and business, and he has a proven track record of driving business results and fostering long-term strategic global partnerships. He's currently at Empowered Startups, and he worked with Canadian most prestigious universities. He's a skilled mentor and avid sportsman who is passionate about travel, people, and relationship building. Today, before I give the word to Shawn, we will speak about the Canadian Federal Business Immigration Program. And the talk will be about several things. We'll first see what we discuss, but then we will discuss the program requirements, program features, benefits, what is innovative in that, and types of SUV businesses. And we will also have some more information to share. And once we finish, we'll do a Q&A with you. You will be able to ask your questions. And based on this, you will get your personalized answer directly from Shawn. So please welcome Shawn Olson. Hi, Shawn. Good to have you with us. How are you?
Hi, Daniel. How are you doing? Good to be here. Thanks for the introduction, and it's nice to be joining people from all over the world.
Yeah, thank you. So did I mention everything correctly about you? If I missed something, please add some words about yourself.
No. I think you did a good enough job. I'm the less important part of this conversation today, more so the subject matter. But yeah, no, I used to be a sports coach, a football coach here in Canada, and then I've moved over to Empowered about 4 or 5 years ago, and have been working on the startup visa program and a number of our other entrepreneur investment type programs around the world. And it's exciting to get to know people's stories from all over the world, learn about their businesses, and see if we can help them, find an immigration pathway that will allow them to live the life they want, but also start their businesses in a great country like Canada or Portugal in the EU, and also in the United States, where some of our other programs are located.
Yeah, so you mentioned about Portugal, and we will also give some more details about that. Guys, we have also the other event in a couple of days about visa to Portugal and entrepreneurial program to Portugal. And if you haven't registered yet, go on our website and you can join the talk as well. Shawn will be speaking on that also. So, Shawn, please start on the topic. I know you have some slides, and let's get into it.
Okay, sounds good. Here, I'll just crank up my presentation here, and we'll get right into it.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it's let me know when you can.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks, Daniel. So, as we mentioned, we're going to speak about the startup visa program. For it is the federal startup visa program. So it's the big dog when you're talking about finding business immigration pathways to Canada. So to begin with, especially with an international audience, I'm a Canadian, and so sometimes we take for granted when you live in this country, how great a place it is to live. So I thought I'd sort of outline a few things about Canada that make it an appealing, place to live and raise your family and just conduct business and life. Make sure I share some of that with you guys to give you a good perspective on things. So why Canada? Stable constitutional democracy. That's one of the big things. You have a say in our democratic system here in Canada. It's quite stable, as you can see from all the things going on in the world today. And being in North America has its advantages because we are not surrounded by many countries, fortunately. So there's not a lot of, we just have to find ways to make good with the United States, and everything seems to go well. Well respected and influential internationally. The maple leaf is a symbol of Canada and something that I think carries some weight and also is welcomed. I went traveling a number of times in my life, and every single time when I had a Canadian maple leaf on our backpack, people were very friendly and always looking to talk, and I generally had a good perspective on who we are and what we believe. Second largest country in the world, but a very small population base. So there's a lot of space here in Canada. A lot of it's unused up in the northern parts of our country. Quality universal healthcare, that's a huge one. Everyone in Canada has a right to healthcare and to be taken care of on that front. Quality education system all the way from kindergarten, so 5 years old, or actually even preschool, going as early as 2 years old, all the way up to university. It's subsidized or free depending on the pathway that you're taking. Very low crime rate, which is good when you're talking about a standard of living. Clean, well-organized cities. Being a fairly new country, we have the advantage of having been able to plan our cities. One of the things that I enjoyed most about spending time in Europe, for when I lived there for 6 years, was the unplanned nature of cities. There was a beauty that came from the unplanned nature, but it was always a little confusing. In Canada, you typically don't have those issues because most of our cities are 150 years old, 200 years old at the most. G7 nation with 10th largest economy. And these are the ones I think that are most meaningful for people when they're thinking about moving their life to Canada. We've been ranked #1 as far as best country over the last 2 or 3 years, and always in the top 5 over the last decade. Quality of life metrics, there's lots of these surveys, but we're always near the top, and #1 recently in the quality of life, and #4 on the entrepreneurship front. And then on the Human Freedom Index, and again, I don't really know what goes into this, but I do know that no matter what source, you're going to see us be very high, or Canada be very high in those metrics. Which again, as a whole, gives you perspective. It's a pretty good place to live and exist. Now I'll talk to you a little bit about empowered startups. So we're a Canadian business incubator. We were established 15, 20 years ago. We focused most of our business on domestic businesses and helping them incubate and accelerate and launch here in Canada. And then in 2014, we were designated by the Canadian government to run the startup visa program, which that was a big moment in our existence because it shifted our attention from domestic entrepreneurs to international entrepreneurs. Our head office is in Vancouver. We do have a satellite office in Whistler, which is about an hour and a half up the road. Most of our leadership team lives up there, so that's why we have a small office up there as well. And then we've since, over the last 3 or 4 years, also launched and established offices in France, Portugal, and most recently in Seattle in the United States. Fairly small sort of team. We have 26 staff. 5 leadership executives, and then a number of collaborators. So our team expands a little bit depending on what we're doing. And we do have a number of collaborators all over the world in research facilities and innovation hubs and universities that we've built good partnerships with. And although Startup Visa is one of our main business lines, we do have other business lines, and we are a foundry, and we do actually have our own businesses that have come out of startups like yourself, like most of you are trying to launch. And so we one of the advantages with Empowered is that we not only help other people launch businesses, but we've done it ourselves, and we have real life experiences and all those things I think are valuable when you're talking about understanding on entrepreneur and the challenges that you face. So then we'll jump into the SUV program in a little bit more detail. And we'll start really just with the history of the program. I think it's important to understand where the program started and where it is now. So first off, Canada has kind of gone away with a lot of the investment immigration programs that you might see, like Golden Visa or some of the Caribbean programs that exist. In 2012, and we ran one of those for close to 25, 30 years. We closed it down in 2012 because it was largely unpopular politically internally in Canada. And I think a lot of those same stresses are happening with a lot of those other immigrant investor programs that are currently being run in the EU and those other nations. And the Canadian government decided that we didn't want to have a situation where people were investing money and then getting citizenship or permanent residency as a result of that. They were looking for some other way to help stimulate a greater good for the Canadian economy and culture. The Quebec Investor Program was around until 2019, and anyone that knows a little bit about Canada, Quebec has a sort of a special place because it is a French-speaking province in Canada. Our history, there was the English and the French that basically, were fighting over who was going to, establish Canada as a nation, and Quebec has maintained a special status. So they did have an immigrant investor program up until 2019, and when it was suspended. And it's been suspended over the last 3 or 4 years. And currently, there are no other immigrant investment pathways to get to Canada. So as a replacement, the Canadian government created the Startup Visa Program. It was established in 2013, so right after the CIIP was closed down. They established the Startup Visa Program. It initially began with 2 categories. VCs and angels were the initial categories. But the Canadian government very, very quickly realized that they were not going to be able to drive the amount of volume of business applicants through the program using just those 2 categories, because they're typically dealing with more established businesses when you're dealing with a VC or an angel. So in 2014, they decided that to open up the program to attract the amount of business immigration startups to come to Canada, they created the incubator class, which opened it up and made it a lot more accessible to startups to come to Canada and for entrepreneurs to now access the program in a meaningful way. In 2018, the program was made permanent. So up until that point, it was a pilot program, meaning that they were testing it out and trying to gain information to figure out whether it was going to be successful and accomplish the goals that the Canadian government had. And then in 2018, it was made permanent as a part of the immigration pathways to come to Canada, which was a big moment. Makes it much harder to remove, and means that it's the Canadian government is committed to the Startup Visa Program as an option or a pathway for entrepreneurs and business people to come to Canada. How the program was constructed, and it's quite intelligent actually, is the Canadian government realized that they really don't know a whole bunch about startups, how to make them successful, and how to even vet and certify whether it's a legitimate opportunity to be a business in Canada. So they outsourced and entrusted that part of the program to incubators, VCs, and angels. And so they went through a designation process to be able to have access to providing this or administering this program to potential applicants. And that was the designation process. It was created in an act of Parliament of Canada, so it's quite a serious thing. And we now, as one of those designated organizations, administer the SUV program for the IRCC. And the IRCC basically vets our certifications or our support for different entrepreneurs. You can see here that these are sort of the numbers up until 2019. I stopped at 2019 because obviously there was a pandemic that happened, and so it sort of made the 2020, 2021 a little bit disjointed as far as statistics. But you can see that in 2013, there were 2 applicants in the program. So it was wise for the Canadian government to add another category. And then it's been growing ever since, all the way to the point where, the target for Canada And a target doesn't mean it's a quota. There are no quotas in this program, but the Canadian government is targeting 1,000 applicants per year to come into Canada through the Startup Visa program, and has the capability of increasing the amount of accepted applicants up to 1,500. So they're quite serious. And the big reason to understand the history is to know that Canada has created this program to attract international entrepreneurs. If they didn't want international entrepreneurs to come to Canada, they would have just shut down the CIIP and not replaced it with anything. And you can see that there were two sort of additional designation points. You know, in 2016, they added a few designated organizations. And then again in 2018, when the program was made permanent, they added a number more. The reason I bring this up is that, you know, there are almost, I believe it's close to 65 designated organizations right now throughout the three categories, but not are always created the same. You know, some have vast experience running the program, some have very little experience running the program. And each one of those organizations is able to create their own programming within the legislation of the Startup Visa program. So sometimes you might hear slightly different ways of doing things. And usually it's due to either a vast experience or lack of experience from the amount of applicants that the designated organization has dealt with. So we'll go into a bit of an overview of the program now. And this is just really simply, you know, what the program was created for. Okay, so it was created to attract international entrepreneurs and business people from around the world with innovative businesses or business ideas that they're going to actively develop and launch in Canada. Okay, so that sort of sentence, you know, long sentence, but it basically encaptures almost everything that is required in the program, you know, as far as the core values that the Canadian government are looking to attract and approve in the program. The key thing to understand is that Canada understands that businesses are going to be successful or less than successful or sometimes fail. They were wise to understand that is just a inherent part of starting businesses. There is really no way to ensure that every business is going to be successful. And they also clearly understood that this business immigration pathway is an immigration pathway. So people looking to launch businesses in Canada through this pathway are looking to immigrate as well. So you can't really separate the two. And the key element is that they understood that true entrepreneurs, typically have multiple ventures that they're looking to start. Okay, so sometimes the first one might not be successful, but the second and third one might be successful. And almost any entrepreneur worth their salt has had failures in their past. And Canada is not necessarily as concerned with the actual business that is being launched, although it has to meet a certain criteria, but more focused on the entrepreneur, the person with resiliency, creativity, industriousness, you know, work ethic. All these types of traits are the types of people that Canada is looking to add to our culture and our society through this program. The key elements to understand is that, you know, immigration can be a bit of a monkey's lunch. It can be very complicated. This pathway is simple, it's straightforward, and it's a fast track direct to PR immigration pathway. Okay, so anyone that's been through any kind of immigration program anywhere in the world, if you can get simple and straightforward and relatively fast, usually that is the triumvirate of a great program. And this program, if you're the right applicant, has all of those hallmarks. And then basically the key element is getting support or convincing one of those designated business experts that you fit the program and that they're willing to support you in launching your business in Canada. If you're able to make that happen and convince one of those designated organizations, then the program usually is very simple and straightforward and fast, and is fairly easy to execute in all honesty. So we'll quickly jump into the requirements of the program, the actual sort of hard requirements. Okay. First one is general Ielts CLB level 5. Okay. So you have to have English language skills to be eligible for this program. Now, CLB level 5 is not an extraordinary high level of English. It's basically being able to be conversational. Okay. And what I mean by conversational is not, you don't have to be fluent. You don't have to be, we've had many conversations with people that have gotten a CLB level 5 that are disjointed, or people are struggling. I spent 6 years living in Vienna, Austria. And so I understand, and a lot of people in our organization empathize with people learning English as a second language. So the point here is that you have to be able to be functional. And as long as that's in place, then the program is accessible to you. I would say this has not been a super restrictive requirement for the program, although, and it is one that's changeable. So people can start as a CLB level 5 and struggle, and then work to increase that English language proficiency. And we've had a number of applicants that have gone through that growth in their English language skills. Second one is the business needs to be innovative. Okay. And innovative basically comes down to, and we'll get into it a bit more detail in a later slide, but it has to be innovative in the sense that it's going to be approved by a designated organization. Designated organizations are experts in understanding what is innovative in terms of this program. That's one of the key elements of being a designated organization. So they should be able to tell you very quickly whether you meet the requirements. Okay. One of the key elements is that the business has potential to scale globally. Okay. So a key element is that the business is not expected to only do business in Canada. In fact, we're trying to attract businesses through this program that are going to be able to do business in multiple regions of the world, multiple countries of the world. Okay. The headquarters must be in Canada. The IP must be registered in Canada. But the business or the customers can be anywhere. Okay. And we'll talk a little bit about scalability in a later slide, but that is the key element when you're talking about what type of business actually fits this program. Founders have to be genuine entrepreneurs. Okay. And again, we'll get into more detail of what that means. And each applicant must own at least 10% of the business, and all applicants must own at least 51% of the business, so the majority of ownership. Okay. That means you can have people that are owners or founders of the business that are not on the actual immigration application, as long as they don't have majority control of the business. Okay. And then 10%, obviously, if you have 5 founders, which is the maximum you can have on an SUV application, each business founder can have 10% ownership until you get to that maximum of, or sorry, that minimum of 51%. And then founders, they're expected to be active launching the business in Canada. Okay. And people always ask, what does activity mean? And the Canadian government, when creating this program, actually, again, quite intelligently, and I don't say this often about governments and creating immigration programs, but it was quite intelligent. They haven't created a list of what activities need to be checked off to meet the requirements of the program. They basically come at it from a premise of, if you're an entrepreneur, you're launching an innovative business, that means there's sort of a time crunch. You can't be sitting on an innovative business, because 2 years from now it might not be innovative anymore. And so activity would manifest itself in a number of different shapes, forms, sizes, and behaviors. And they just want to see what those things are specific to your business. And they have a belief, and I think most designated organizations would share this belief, that entrepreneurs behave a certain way. Genuine entrepreneurs behave a certain way. Let's put it that way. Non-genuine ones also behave a certain way. And so the Canadian government is just looking to figure out, okay, where do you fall on that spectrum once you're in the program? Okay. And activity is the key piece. And then the business must be incorporated and headquartered in Canada. That is an element that needs to be executed on, and fairly early, that the business should be incorporated, and the headquarters and the main activities or key components of activity are conducted in Canada. So we'll jump into the features, okay? And these are things that we've touched on maybe earlier, but we'll get into a bit more detail on. So the first one is that you get an opportunity to apply directly to permanent residency, okay? So what does that mean? Most times in the Canadian system anyways, and I think this is reflected in most immigration systems. I know the US is the same. Portugal has very similar sort of processes. to be able to make your application directly to permanent residency and then be approved or rejected on that permanent residency is very, very simple. Okay. There is no work permit first as a mandatory step and then going to a permanent residency application, where each is a gate to be accepted into the next opportunity to immigrate to the country of your choice. So in the SUV program, you apply directly to PR. There is no point system. There's no multi-step process. So it's very unique and very simple in terms of how the program works. You can have a maximum of 5 founders, as I mentioned earlier, on one business. They have to meet those ownership requirements. But you can have 5 founders. So that makes less work for everybody if you have 5 people that are helping to launch a business. And teams can be great. If you have 5 founders that are genuine and are all going to be active in launching the business, then it can be a great situation to apply as a team through the SUV program. Each applicant can bring their dependent family. Okay, that's important. We understand that families are at the core of Canadian society. And it's important to anyone that would be looking to immigrate to Canada and especially run a business. And quite often businesses, even though you might have a founder, the roles and the responsibilities permeate the entire family. So each family member that is dependent, spouse, wife, husband, or dependent children, which usually means up to 22, are all able to be a part of the immigration applications. There is an expedited work permit and PR application. So basically, it's direct to PR, but those PRs are typically decided much faster than the average PR application. Okay. Now, during the pandemic, things have slowed down a little bit for a number of reasons that are probably obvious to people, but we're starting to see the IRCC, which is the ultimate governing body that decides whether someone is approved or rejected for any immigration application, are starting to ramp up their activities again and get back to pre-pandemic sort of speed and timing. Work permit is also an option in this program, so you can basically apply for PR and work permit at the same time. The work permit allows you to come to Canada and start living and launching your business. The work permit is a bit of a specialized work permit, so it's processed faster, it's prioritized. Usually takes somewhere between, let's say, 6 to 16 weeks these days for a work permit to be approved. We've, in 8 years at Empowered, we've never had a work permit rejected to this point. So it's quite a certain pathway, and that's from all regions of the world. But it does take somewhere between 6 to, say, 16 weeks on average. Prior to the pandemic, at the end of 2019, we were seeing 4 to 6 weeks as far as work permit approvals. So it is quite fast, especially relative to other programs. And you can come earlier and don't have to wait in your home country for PR decision. No minimum investment is required in the business. Okay, you need to demonstrate that you have funds to settle in Canada, which it's usually, depending on family size, somewhere between, say, 20,000 to 35,000 Canadian dollars. But the Canadian government does not say you need to invest $200,000 in your business, and that's a minimum, okay? Or there's a maximum. They basically, again, bring it back to, what do entrepreneurs behave a certain way? If you're going to launch a business in Canada, you should have resources set aside to launch that business, okay? Whatever those are, put them in your corporate bank account when you incorporate your business. But we're not going to tell you what a minimum amount is, okay? And that's, again, where a designated organization comes in, because we would have a conversation about, what is realistic and how that all comes together. But the Canadian government is not saying that you have to have a minimum amount of money to put into your business. And then the last piece, and this kind of ties the entire program together, there are no business performance requirements or benchmarks in this program, okay? So the Canadian government, and sorry, this is a little bit different than almost every other startup visa program around the world, which has these sort of benchmarks that are laid out as far as business performance to be able to, for the government to evaluate whether you are allowed to remain in the program or get kicked out. And that's a huge piece of the puzzle and the certainty from our perspective as far as why this program is a good option for people, because it squarely puts the responsibilities and the control over the immigration file on the applicant's shoulders. All you have to do is give effort and try to make your business successful. Okay. And as long as you're doing that in a genuine and active way, then Canada is looking for that person. And it connects to that idea that the business is important. It's how we determine whether somebody fits the program, but actually the human being is what Canada is looking to attract as much as anything. So those are the big ticket sort of features to the program. Now we'll talk a little bit about some of the benefits that the SUV program has. Again, sort of straightforward process, no point systems, no multiple steps. It's not complicated, easy to understand. With our program, we have a 3-step process that anyone can take a look at and go, okay, I understand what I need to do, and I understand where I am in order to be successful in this program. So I think that is a very meaningful one for someone trying to understand, what their life could look like in the future when they are accepted into an SUV type of program here in Canada. Processing is fast. Again, like I said, work permits are 6 to 16 weeks these days. PR decisions are typically happening somewhere between 12 to 24 months. So once we approve a venture and the immigration applications are made, the Canadian government now spends anywhere between 12 to 24 months to evaluate whether this person, it fits the program. And largely what they're looking at that point is what activity, what are you doing with your business? And they're just verifying. They say, great, you know what, Empowered or the designated organization has endorsed you. Fantastic. We're just going to make sure that everything they've endorsed is in line. Okay. And almost always this comes down to one element. What are you doing with your business? Just show us that you're an entrepreneur. Behave like an entrepreneur. If you do that, then approval is extremely high. There's very, very small chance of being rejected if that's what you're doing. Flexible requirements. So the requirements in the program, there aren't many specific hard requirements outside of the language skills, the business, the support, all those things I mentioned earlier. There's no minimum education requirements. You don't have to have a doctorate or a bachelor's degree to be eligible for the program. There's no age restrictions. So you can be 18 years old or you can be 65 years old. There's many other immigration programs make it more difficult for people that are over 40. This program, that is a non-factor. There are no restrictions on where to live in Canada. Now, there is one caveat. You can't locate yourself or your business in Quebec. Again, specialized sort of process with the province of Quebec. Anywhere else in Canada is fine, though. And so really, it's up to you where you decide to locate your business and live. And just so you know, Empower Startups, like we're located in Vancouver. That's where our offices are. We don't have offices all over the country, but we are very proficient at incubating businesses virtually. So again, we have no preference where people live or reside once you're in the startup visa program with us. Some incubators do, but for us, we've created a system that allows us to incubate people virtually. Whether you're in Canada or anywhere in the world, really. And there's no industry restrictions. So as long as the business is innovative, again, we'll get into a bit later. You can be in any industry, right? Whether it's manufacturing, whether it's tech, whether it's agriculture. The Canadian government is not targeting any specific industry. They just want innovative businesses and the right type of applicant. Work permit, like I said, easy, applies, faster entry to Canada. So people can come and start, living and launching their business. It's actually a really good way to demonstrate that you are genuine, is to move your life to Canada in an early way. But the one thing and also bring your family with you. That's a huge piece of the puzzle. But it also doesn't mean that you have to remain in Canada full time. You can go back and forth, and Canadian government and the program allows for people that are managing busy lives. Many of our clients have businesses that they're running in Hong Kong or Vietnam or the Middle East. And they quite often go back and forth and are spending 2 months in Canada and then go for a month back to Dubai or whatever it is. And that's normal and acceptable. And then the immigration decision is not tied to business success. Okay. Now, it doesn't mean that a successful business obviously demonstrates genuine intent and a bunch of other things. But the success of the business is not the key factor to an approval or rejection. It's the activity and the behavior of the entrepreneurs and the founders. That really is what's where the IRCC hinges their decision on in this program. So that's again that is it should be comforting for genuine entrepreneurs, because it's clear that you are in control of your destiny when it comes to the immigration side. So now, what is innovative? This is the big one. Basically, I describe it in 5 key points, okay? The obvious one is new products, okay? Or new processes. Those are key elements. Those are so something completely novel or innovative, a new invention, those would basically qualify as innovative, obviously, okay? The ones that the majority of our clients fall under would be improvements to existing products or processes. Those are the vast majority. Probably 80% of our businesses fall into taking something that already exists and they found a way to improve it, to make it better, to make it faster, to make it more efficient. Okay, and that is where the vast majority of innovation we see when we're dealing with applicants. And then it must have the ability to scale globally. Now, being able to scale basically means, for the SUV program, is that you don't have to add human beings to grow the business, right? So, for example, there's a bunch of examples here of companies and things like that that basically would fit or wouldn't fit, and things like Uber and Airbnb and the Honest Company. Like, a lot of these companies are just finding different ways to do things. Uber is just a taxi service that brings together people looking for work and people looking for ride sharing, right? So nothing crazy innovative about that, but the mechanism that made that accessible to the greater population was the innovation, right? The designated organizations are the key element into deciding what is innovative. Now, don't get me wrong, DOs or designated organizations have to be able to defend their decisions at times, if challenged by the IRCC. But if you do it properly and you have enough experience, it's very rare that a challenge would come up. But businesses that typically would not be scalable are sort of in that last point there, and would not be considered innovative, would be things like consultancies or law firms, or accountants. So a lot of those professional services, in their traditional sense, would not be businesses that qualify. Doctors, unfortunately, not a scalable business really. To treat more patients, typically you need to add more doctors. So it really doesn't fit. Simple services also, like restaurants, gas stations, retail stores, those are also things that typically are not innovative. Now, sometimes there are improvements to those traditional businesses that could fit. For example, Skip the Dishes here in Canada is a delivery service attached to restaurants. Okay, that was an innovative business at some point, and it's not the actual cooking of the food and providing it to people, but it's the ability to find ways to deliver it to people's homes that with businesses that maybe don't have delivery services, and so that made it a more innovative sort of business model than a traditional restaurant. Some of the businesses that you see there, that a BMTT is one of our businesses that we've launched recently, which is just it's a process of freezing seafood at sea that it keeps in a lot more of the nutrients and the nutritional value in the seafood. It's a fast freezing process, and there's iSober is another one at the end there that basically is a way to test sobriety before leaving a party or anything that you're doing, to make sure that you're not over the limit, right? So there's a lot of different sort of businesses that we've worked with over the years. Actually, well over 350 to this point have been the types of startup visa businesses that we worked with, or the amounts. So we've seen a lot of different types that qualify under the innovative requirements. So we'll touch on briefly now just our experience at Empowered Startups. So as I mentioned, we've had over 350 approved SUV applicants. That's by far the most out of any designated organization, almost double that of the next closest. And largely because we've taken a bit of an entrepreneurial approach to this program. Instead of a traditional approach, we don't have cohorts, so we can take applicants any time of the year. We've created a digital platform that allows us to work with entrepreneurs all over the world, from their home country, to help them validate their business model and make sure that their business is something that could be supported in the SUV program. So all of those things have allowed us to be quite nimble and flexible when dealing with entrepreneurs, and that has allowed us to work with a large number of entrepreneurs and make this program accessible, right? And that was one of the promises that we made as an organization in our designation process to the Canadian government, saying that, hey, we want to help you grow this program. This shouldn't be just a small, 2, 5, 50 applicants a year type of immigration pathway. We should be able to get close to the targets that the Canadian government has laid out. And we've been a big part of growing this program over the last 7.5 to 8 years. Last 12 months, we've had over 80 approved applications coming through our incubator. Again, by far the most out of any designated organization. Success rate, 91%. Now, obviously, the business success rate is going to be a lot lower than that. But the success rate are people that have been able to use this pathway to immigrate to Canada and have an opportunity to have a successful business. And our specialization, I would say, as an incubator is in earlier stage startups. So pre-prototype, I would say, is where we specialize. Doesn't mean that we only work with pre-prototype staged businesses. We do work with businesses that already have customers and are already generating revenue. But that's probably about 25-30% of our overall clientele. Very good at helping people take ideas, innovative ideas, and get them to their first customers. That's kind of our specialization, if I were to describe it quickly to somebody. And we are industry agnostic. This has also led to the amount of clients we've been able to work with. We don't specialize in just tech or agri-tech or manufacturing. We're not pretending to be experts in any one industry or space. We do have experience in a number of different, quite common innovative industries and spaces, but our job is to connect our entrepreneurs to experts in those spaces. And quite often the entrepreneurs we're working with are experts themselves. So, and we want to integrate them into the Canadian business community, remove as many barriers as possible for them to make their lives as easy as possible when they're going through this immigration pathway and starting their business, and just make sure that they always have somewhere to go to be able to alleviate any of the concerns or challenges they might be experiencing in their business. Again, industries, we're agnostic. These are some of the ones that we've worked with over the years. And then, like I said, these are some of the regions that we've worked with. And in all honesty, we've worked with almost businesses from almost every corner of the globe. And that's one of the exciting parts of my job, or our team's job, is when we're being contacted by entrepreneurs around the world to hear their stories, to understand the challenges they're facing in their current countries and why they're maybe looking to come to Canada and launch a business here. And that's an exciting part of our job, and something that I know the majority of our team gets a lot of satisfaction in hearing those stories and interacting with those types of people. The next slide, just what is our process, the 3-step process that we follow, okay? And again, we want to make it simple and so we can move quickly, but also so it's easy to understand and so people can understand what the expectations are. First step would be an evaluation phase. This usually takes about 2 weeks for us. We collect documents, from a client, and the main documents we need are CV, a detailed CV, so we can see the expertise in the background, a business summary, can be 1 page, 2 page. We're not looking for a business plan. Eventually, if you have a business plan or a pitch deck, that's great. You can send that to us, but it's not required. We just want to know what is the crux of the business. And we're really trying to figure out, okay, not only what is the opportunity for the business, but we're not trying to pick winners or losers. That'll be up to the entrepreneur to make their business successful. We just want to make sure it's going to qualify for the program. And then Ielts Score, if you have it, quite often we can start without an Ielts Score. We just want to make sure that there's a good chance that the IELTS is achievable. And then a passport picture page, because every region of the world has certain nuances and things that are part of that immigration process from that region. If everything looks great, we would move to an intake interview, and we would have a half an hour, 45-minute video conference call with our intake committee and all the founders on the business. And the idea is just to get to know each other. Okay. So evaluation, if we have a full document package, honestly, 10 days to 14 days to go through that part of the process. If everything checks out, we would accept you in the accelerator program. Okay. And the key element here is that we're going to actually have our entrepreneurs, our startup leaders or our mentors working with the founders of the business to put together a validated business model. Okay. The business submissions we're going to help you build out so that we can make sure they meet the standards that we need to be able to provide our support. Okay, it removes any of the question work. There is a little bit of learning, and mostly, for an experienced entrepreneur, the learning is stuff that they might already know, but it's really getting a common language, understanding the structure that we have to moving things forward in our incubator and our accelerator. And then again, putting together that business submission that we're actually going to put our stamp of approval on, and have the confidence that we could defend it if we were ever challenged by the IRCC. And so again, this can be done from your home country. Our mentors are all over the world, and they would actually be working through our Global Startup Accelerator platform, which is something that we actually sell to other universities, innovation hubs, and incubators. And we'd be working through that program to move your business forward to the point we could approve the venture report. Okay. It can take anywhere between 4 to 10 weeks. We've had an entrepreneur finish it in 2 weeks, but it really, you can move as fast or as slow as you want. And the idea is it's convenient and you can do it at your own time. It's not a traditional classroom environment. You can wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning in Iran and sit down and get to work on your venture, press submit, then your mentor would get it when they wake up in Vietnam, 8 hours later, and be able to review it and provide feedback. So it's a pretty slick process that allows for us to be nimble and move people through, and also make sure that they have the support and the guidance that they require. And then once we can approve that venture report, we would then go to the incubation phase. We would provide a contract, and then once it's signed, we would then provide the letter of support and submit our documents to the Canadian government, to the IRCC, and then the immigration applications would happen from the client's perspective, and they would also submit their applications to the IRCC. Those two documents come together at the IRCC level, and that's when they know they have a valid application. And then from there, we would work to incubate your business. Typically speaking, immigration decisions for PR are, like I said, 12 to 24 months. Some go a little longer. A few go a little shorter. It's merit-based, so the key element is that you're not in a queue per se. If you have a really good application with really good activity and demonstrating lots of genuineness as an entrepreneur, those people quite often get processed much faster than someone who doesn't have all of those things. So the key element is to actively and genuinely work to launch your business. Okay. And we would provide our incubation services typically for 24 months. You would have a startup leader that would be, your one-stop shop for all of our resources that at Empowered. And, obviously that would be tailor-made to the business, and in a classroom or being incubated with 5 other businesses. It's all one-on-one and very specific to the business and the stage that you're at. Okay. And along the way, the IRCC might, ask questions, and, we would be working with your immigration counsel. It's very important that people using this pathway are going to have an immigration professional as well to represent their file. We're not an immigration representative. We're quite knowledgeable in that area, but we don't represent files and we don't give immigration advice. But we do work very closely with immigration professionals to make sure that the journey is smooth and you're getting the benefit of both of those professionals. And then once PR is approved, then basically you're free to do what you wish with your business. You can continue to run it, you can sell it, you can add it, you can shut it down if you wanted to. All those things are valid options and free to run your business as you see fit. So now just again, I'll touch very briefly on 2 portions of the immigration pathway, and I just kind of separated it into pre-LOS. So LOS is abbreviation for letter of support. That would be the immigration paperwork we provide to an applicant and their immigration counsel to have access to the program, and then post LOS or the incubation phase. So it would start with these 2 steps in some form, okay? And they don't have to come in order. They can be interchangeable. First step would be to engage a designated organization, a VC, an angel, or an incubator. Okay, you can reach out via email, but unfortunately, designated organizations are notorious for not being overly responsive to direct inquiries. Not always, but quite often there is a flux of a ton of people that are reaching out, so it's hard to process them effectively and quickly. So you might go to an immigration lawyer or a consultant or an RCIC as well. We have a number of relationships with immigration firms around the world, and we have intake from both of those sort of channels. And sometimes people engage us directly, and then they engage an immigration lawyer. Sometimes they engage an immigration lawyer or an RCIC, and then engage with us. Both are fine. Okay, but at some point, those two interactions would need to take place prior to sort of full-fledged committing to the program. Then you would develop your business proposal and validate your business model. Now, most times, some of that work has been done ahead of time because you need something to propose to a designated organization, okay? But the reason why we have it as the third step is because quite often we don't need a fully developed business plan. We're going to help you make sure that it's developed to the point where we know we can defend it. So we would do that work with you in our accelerator program. And then you would secure a letter of support from the DO, and now you're free to make those applications. Okay, this whole portion, depending on the incubator and depending on your motivation level, really could take anywhere between a month, let's say, to 4 or 5 months. Okay, maybe some incubators or some designated organizations might take 7 or 8 months. But usually somewhere between a month to say 4 months is normal, I would say. And again, if you're really motivated, you can move through that faster. It's just a matter of providing the documentation that the incubator needs. And then post LOS, okay, this is where you would have your letter of support. Your immigration counsel will have your letter of support. Once we issue that, we actually send our portion and our submission to the IRCC. And then once those work permit or PR applications are made, then the two documents come back together. And again, that's when the IRCC knows that they have a valid immigration application. Work permit approval will typically happen first. You would land in Canada. And like I said, these days it's somewhere between 6 to 16 weeks on average. Some jurisdictions are seeing a little bit longer, but we're hoping to get back to that pre-pandemic sort of 4 to 6 weeks consistent PR approval. Incorporate your business, establish a corporate bank account. Okay. Now this is one that's a movable piece as well. Some people incorporate their business ahead of time. We actually advise people not to because we've seen a lot of mistakes made when incorporating businesses. And so it's nice for us to be able to lay out what that path or what that incorporation should look like and make sure that no mistakes are made. It doesn't have to be redone. I would put it after, the engagement with us, and then even you could wait as long as landing in Canada to be able to incorporate your business. You can also do it virtually as well. And even opening up a corporate bank account can be done virtually. It's a little harder. Incorporating business is easy. But it's if you have contact with the right corporate lawyers, they'd be willing to do that for you. Launch a business. Okay. So again, now it's just get to work. Okay. I put behave like an entrepreneur. That's really the crux of it. You guys, the majority of people listening to this conversation right now are entrepreneurs, and you behave a certain way. Just keep doing that and collect evidence as you go of those activities, and that will position you very, very well for success in this program. Then PR approval, and then you make those business decisions. Like I said, you can continue to run the business, you can sell it, you can shut it down. All those things are real sort of choices. And now once you've had that PR approval, now you need to meet your PR requirements, which is I think being in Canada for I think it's 3 years out of the next 5 years, and not all at one time, but that's how you maintain your PR status or be able to move to citizenship. But the business now is removed from the immigration process, and you're free to do what you need to do. And that means you could have your ownership requirements or ownership shares, drop below those thresholds, all that kind of stuff. And then I thought I'd just, sort of lay out a few things that would typically sort of fall under activities that would be centered around a business. Okay. So things like incorporating the business would be very, very sort of fun, foundational business activity, opening accounts, conducting market surveys, purchase orders, hiring staff, building MVPs, wireframes. All these things would be things that would fall under business activities. And we just remind people that as you're going through these stages and doing this work, having these meetings, just collect evidence, make sure you're tracking these things, because at some point you're going to be able to support your genuineness by providing these things to the IRCC if asked. We actually encourage people that if you have milestones, don't wait for the IRCC to ask for them, share them. Again, those are things that genuine entrepreneurs would do. And so that should sort of govern the way that you behave when you're in the SUV program. And that's it. That's the startup visa program. Thanks so much for listening. I'm sure there's tons of questions. There always are, and I've been able to provide a high level overview of the program. But it is a fantastic pathway to become Canadian and to launch and start your business here in Canada. We've had many entrepreneurs that have had successful businesses with the SUV business that they started, but we've also had other ones that have had unsuccessful SUV businesses, but gone on to other successes with other businesses that they've started, once they got through the SUV or the immigration pathway.
Thank you, Shawn. I really appreciate so many details on this program, because we have lots of questions, and I'm sure you partially already answered them. Well, everyone, before we start, before we get to the questions, please subscribe to our channel, press the like button, share your comments, share your thoughts in the comments below, and of course, spread the voice about this talk, because it can help more entrepreneurs around the world. We have the first question, and we have from SV. How many people apply usually to this program, and what is the acceptance rate to this program?
Oh, good question. So how many people? Well, it's tough to tell, because there are, like, every designated organization would have their intake. There's a lot. We get a lot of inquiries. So if we were to have just people reaching out to us via email, through our inbox, or through one of our B2C channels, we're I would say per month, you're probably 50, 60 people reaching out. A lot of them are unqualified, though, meaning that they really don't have the necessary documents, or even, motivation, or they're not what we would call real entrepreneurs type of thing. It doesn't mean that we obviously work with them and try to find ways that they could be a good fit for the program, but a lot of times it's just a square peg in a round hole. Through the, like, how many people apply, like, actual with an application to the IRCC. Yeah. Varies per year. It's grown a little bit over the last couple of years. So I would say this year, actual SUV cases, so not people but teams, are probably close to around 800-900 on an annual basis. And then, I think the other part, Daniel, was what is the acceptance rate? Yeah. I actually don't have any stats on what is the acceptance rate for people that reach out to us and that we actually accept. What I can tell you with Empowered is that we're going to get back to you very quickly. One of the things we pride ourselves on is responsiveness. And you'll know where you stand, usually within, if we got a full document package, within 24 hours, you would know where you stand. You would know that, hey, you have an option here, that it's your business is we likely consider it innovative. We never 100% know until we've had a chance to have that intake interview on a call and meet with you and hear you talk about your business. But within 24 hours, you'd have a good sense of whether this is a viable pathway for you from our perspective, and whether you can move forward.
All right, thank you. So we have another question from Explorer, and what are the costs the startup? What are the costs the startup founder should plan? Can a pre-approved startup apply before they have a traction? I have about 35K of my life savings. Should I apply? So I guess that's kind of a common question for many founders. Especially
it is. It's a tough one to answer too, because, like, obviously the details of your circumstance would impact the cost a little bit. How I can answer that is with a general sense. So usually we would tell people that to be able to realistically have a chance to be successful in this program, in our program, you would need to have about 100 to 150,000 Canadian dollars. And that would include money paying an immigration counsel, money to set aside for your corporate account, and then our program and fees to be able to go through our SUD program, right? The actual amount we would get into the details fairly quickly once we have receive the document package, because some of it does depend a little bit on a stage of business. What have you done to this stage? All these types. Are you a revenue stage business, have clients, money coming in, or are you a pre-prototype stage business, right? So each one has a slightly different journey. What I would say is that the amount that you invest in your business is largely up to you. We would guide you a little bit on what like if you come to Canada through this program and don't put any money in your corporate account, looks a little fishy, right? So we wouldn't advise them. We typically wouldn't work with people that would be in that situation. The other thing to understand is that when we deal with clients, we usually have a bit of a spectrum that we see. One is the bootstrapped entrepreneur on one extreme, not a lot of resources, has great creative ideas, is driving the business, and true entrepreneur, but just not a ton of resources to make it happen, right? And then the other extreme is someone who's also an entrepreneur, but maybe they're missing an innovative idea. Maybe they have ideas, but they're not great, or they lack validation, or all that kind of stuff. And this is where sometimes teams come into it, because in real life, these people come together all the time, right? Like it's a good business environment to have somebody with business development skills and financial skills come together with a creative founder, right? Now, everyone's going to be judged on the same immigration requirements, so they have to be active, they have to be genuine, they have to be working towards the business. But those teams can kind of solve sometimes each person's problem to some degree. And as long as they're not being formed strictly for the purposes of immigration, then we've seen a lot of successful cases that sort of have people that are coming from different extremes meeting with common business sort of objectives and goals, and putting together really good teams and hunkering down and working on the business, and then being successful in the SUD program. So that can be a way to solve some of those problems, but the specifics of the cost we would sort of get into once we saw the actual document package.
Thank you. There is a person asking for the deadlines of getting into the country. So if he applies today, how soon does he get accepted, and how soon he can get to enter the country? Of course, in a positive.
Well, so to enter the countries, that's a different question. I can promise you that if we got a full document package from you today, you would likely know whether you would have a good chance to be successful in the program within 24 to 48 hours, right? And I say, if it came directly to my inbox, it would be 24 hours for sure. If it comes through one of our other channels, sometimes we have busy days and stuff, so it might be 2 days before you have a response. But the key is always getting the document package, right? Like, I mean, a lot of times we get lots of emails that are like, hey, I'm an entrepreneur, this is my business, what do you think? And like, we can't really work with that. So if you send us that document package that we asked for, we get back to you pretty quickly with some meaningful feedback. And then you'd be sort of into our process now, right? To be able to land in Canada depends on a lot of factors: stage of business, what work's been done, how fast you go through acceleration, all those types of things. And then region, right now, like say, for example, Indian nationals are seeing fairly long work permit processing times, okay? Whereas we've had clients from Hong Kong in the last, month that have been processed for a work permit in 6 weeks, right? So it really depends on region and all those and again, those are things that we can sort of communicate to you in a very general sense once we see the document package, what the expectations would be. Again, we're hoping that, post-pandemic we'll get back to pre-pandemic sort of processing times in the near future. And in that case, then landing in Canada would happen, 2, 3, 4 months, depending on your motivation level.
Yeah, I guess pandemic messed up the entire world. So yeah,
a little bit. Yeah.
All right. Another question from the same person. Do you guys charge money or take equity in your acceleration program, or both, and how much? You already partially answered this question. The same question was for incubation program. Somebody else.
Yeah. So simple answer. We're a for-profit incubator, so we do charge fees. That's how we function, and that's our business model. That's one of the reasons why we're quite nimble and fast, is that this is our business model, right? And we've created it to function as a business. There's two payment points for us. It's acceleration and incubation. Both of those would have sort of payments associated with it. So what was the other part of the question, Daniel? The second part.
And how much you charge, and do you take equity or?
The fees we would I wouldn't be able to tell you until we actually had a document package, but it's within that range I mentioned earlier. The actual sort of equity that we take, we actually don't take equity anymore. We used to at the beginning of the program, and so this gives me an opportunity to talk a little bit about our journey at Empowered. We've been running the program for almost 8 years. We've learned so much in those 8 years doing all of these cases. At the beginning, we were a service provider, but also we took 5-10% equity in most of our businesses. We found that was not a good approach for a number of reasons. One, equity is valuable to the entrepreneur, right? That's your opportunity to, this is your baby, right? It's your opportunity to potentially get future investments in your company, but it's also, you've worked hard for it. So to give it to a company, at the beginning wasn't a great fit from our perspective in that philosophical sense. The other piece is that it kind of clouded the relationship a little bit. You're owner and service provider. That's kind of weird, right? And so we decided, a good 3-4 years ago, that we were going to stop taking equity. We're just a service provider. It creates a very clean and simple relationship. It also makes it very clear to the entrepreneur that their business activity and their effort and energy that they put into the business is what's going to lead to their immigration success, right? And actually, it's been one of our best decisions that we made, because it creates a very simple and straightforward sort of interactions that we have with our founders. And it also makes things very simple as far as what the expectations are for the SUV program.
All right. Well, it makes sense. I guess for the equity part, I totally agree. It's a kind of super valuable asset for the founder. If they're working on something really that can take off, it's a huge opportunity for them to keep it. And the more equity they keep, the better for them. I agree. So a few more questions, guys. We have you have an opportunity to ask more questions. Please type them in the chat. I will ask Shawn if it's a relevant question. Of course, I will be happy to pass it to him. So we have a question from SV. If I had an acceleration before, can I skip this step, or at least an incubation step? And what are the terms and costs on both? So for the cost, you already spoke. Maybe the terms.
So there's a good question on the acceleration phase. So there's lots of acceleration programs around the world, and we're not trying to say that ours is the best ever. It's good, but we're very, very focused on accelerating your business for the purposes of the SUV program, right? So it's a very specific type of acceleration, much different than a general acceleration program, right? So having done another acceleration program isn't enough to bypass that step. Not that it would still be useful experience and knowledge that you gained, I'm sure. But the key element for us to decide whether we could bypass acceleration is, do you have a validated business model? That's the real crux of what we're looking for. And usually the only way that we can be certain that you have a validated business model is, do you have customers? Are you generating revenue? If you're generating revenue, then that would communicate to us that you have a validated business model. And in that case, we quite often would bypass the acceleration phase. It's not going to be productive to you. We would provide you with a template of how we want your information that you've already got formatted. And it would be up to you to format it that way and then resubmit it to us. And quite often there would be an editing process between our team and your team to get it to the point where we could approve it and feel that we could defend it if we had to. But that is possible for revenue generating staged businesses.
I see. And in terms of skipping, he mentioned, so you have incubation and acceleration. So you cannot skip both, or you can skip at least incubation if they have already customers.
Yeah, we could bypass acceleration. We can't skip incubation. Incubation is mandatory. Actually, as a designated organization, we're required to provide incubation services or services to help you launch your business in Canada. When you think about it from the Canadian perspective, they're saying, okay, we're going to allow designated organizations to decide whether this person qualifies for the program, whether the business is innovative. While we also are trying to figure out, are you genuine enough to meet the requirements of the program? But we're also tasked with making sure that we provide enough support and instruction, let's say, or guidance to people that are now trying to launch a business in Canada. Obviously, launching a business in China or Vietnam or South Africa or Turkey is going to be very different than what it would be in Canada. So the Canadian government considers it essential that you have some kind of support in Canada to help you navigate the Canadian business environment, right? And that's where the incubation services would come in.
Yeah, and it's a kind of strategic partnership to me in terms of getting into a country where you've never been to, so trying to immigrate. Let's take a final question because we already quite a long time streaming, and if we would have more questions from you guys, just type them in the chat below, and we will pass it to Shawn. And if it would be appropriate for him or relevant to him, he will try to answer your question in future. There is a question from Explorer. How much expenses do I need to plan for immigration professional? So you mentioned, I guess it's a lawyer, right?
Yeah, good question. So I mean, like any profession, if you wanted a plumber, let's say, you could call 15 different plumbers and get 15 different prices, right? So it's tough to tell exactly what to expect. I would say two things. One, a good experienced immigration professional is essential. They will smooth out so many potential issues that you might have in the program. They're the ones typically that are interacting with the IRCC, making sure your submissions or your applications are done properly. So they're really valuable, right? And we work with them sort of in parallel throughout your entire immigration decision. So it's an area that I wouldn't try to find the cheapest possible pathway is kind of what I'm getting at. We're happy to make referrals. We've worked with a ton of them, and they're definitely not all created equal. And we would be happy to refer you to 2 or 3 and help you can make your own choice. We have no preference. We just want to make sure that, one, you're not representing yourself, because in those instances, and this is something we learned in the early days, if you don't have immigration counsel, then you usually come to us for immigration advice. And in Canada, you need to have a special certification to be able to provide immigration advice, right? So that's not an option for us. And you want the immigration counsel to be experienced and knowledgeable, right? Because we've worked with good ones and bad ones, and there's a big difference between the two. What I would say is that you can expect somewhere between, say, $10,000 to $20,000 to pay for all of that SUV journey, which could include work permit, PR applications, advice, guidance, all those things. And that would be for your family as much as anything. So if you had a family of 4, it'd be closer to $20,000. If you didn't have a family, it was just you, it'd be closer to $10,000. But that would be the range. But again, that's up to the immigration professional to charge their fees and be able to stand on the services that they provide for you.
All right, so I think we are done on the main part and answered to most of the questions. I really appreciate your support, your answers, and we are at the final step of our conversation. So before we finish this talk, I would like to say that I'm really grateful that you found out the time to speak to our global audience and share so many valuable advice. I understand it's your business, and I'm really grateful that we spoke specifically on the problem we are trying to solve for global entrepreneurs. Before we close, I'd like to ask you to think of maybe how you would like to close this session, what's on your heart and your mind, to share with our audience as a final statement closing the session. And while you're thinking, I would like to ask everyone to register on our next talk. Shawn will speak in a couple of days about how to get to Portugal for entrepreneurs. They have a specific program for that, and he will give the path to Portugal. There's a specific program for that. And in my opinion, it's very interesting to learn, and I'd like you to be there to learn from it and ask questions. So it's free of charge. It's part of global world activities as our mission to help entrepreneurs. So Shawn, thank you again, and let's share your thoughts and what you have on your mind. And once we close, don't go. I'll stop the recording, and we'll have some words to exchange.
Sounds good. So, I mean, closing thoughts. First off, thanks so much for having me on the webinar today. I enjoyed sharing a little bit about our SED program and a little bit about empowered startups. You know, the key element is that I think I would leave with everybody on the call is that, you know, entrepreneurship is the wave of the future. The skills and traits that you develop as an entrepreneur as you start to follow your dreams and your passion and your idea and try to bring it to life are valuable. Canada is looking to attract those type of people. So just keep striving. You know, don't be afraid of a pivot here or there. Don't be afraid of barriers that come in your way, and keep chasing the dream. And just know that in Canada there's a country that's looking to attract you to make it your home, and is got their arms open wide to accept you and your business and your families to make it all happen and to help you accomplish your goals. Stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you again in about a week's time.
Thank you so much, Shawn. That was Shawn Olson, VP of Business Development and Empowered Startups, and we spoke about Canada's federal business immigration program for entrepreneurs, and basically startup visa to Canada. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll see you soon on our next podcast or next webinar. And be active on our community, help out each other, and if you don't know how to become a member, go on our website and there is a button join us, and you'll see all the rules on how to be a member of Global World. Well, thank you, and bye everyone.